owe back taxes? Are your tax returns still unfiled? Did you forget to file for an extension? Well, the October 15th deadline is fast approaching and time is running out. If you haven't gathered all of your documents or made any estimated payments, you could soon be targeted by the IRS. They can garnish your wages, freeze your bank accounts, or even seize your property. But there is help available. Tax Network USA, which is a nationwide tax firm, has helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt. They filed hundreds of thousands of tax returns and assisted thousands of people in reducing their tax burdens. Plus, they can help you. So don't wait. Visit tnusa.com/RAV or call 800-905-8000 for a 100% free consultation. In one short phone call, the experts at Tax Network USA will guide you through some simple questions to determine how much you can save. Take action now before it's too late. Visit tnusa.com/RAV or call 800-905-8000. Topping your headlines, there is no rest for the weary as President Trump is preparing to meet with yet another world leader today, this time at the White House. After returning home from Egypt early this morning, 47 will host Argentina's president in the Oval Office this afternoon. Trade and tariffs will likely dominate their bilateral talks. While heading home overnight, the president talking with reporters on Air Force One about once again focusing on putting America first. One of those agenda items is speaking with Illinois Democrat Governor J.B. Pritzker this week. The two, of course, continue to face off in court over the deployment of federal troops to Chicago to deal with that city's crime problem. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
All right, welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. Andrew Kolvet here, executive producer of this show, along with Blake Neff. And we have a new guest. I'm gonna tease just for 1 second. And I'm gonna tell you first about Hillsdale College. History, economics, the great works of literature. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. But even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher course. Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses, including their newest course on totalitarian novels. In this free 8-lecture course, you'll learn from Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn, the legendary Larry Arnn, as he goes in depth on 4 novels: 1984, Brave New World, Darkness at Noon, and That Hideous Strength. Even though these novels were written in the 1930s and 40s, they are more relevant today than ever, and they show what tyrannical governments can do to human nature. Maybe you read these books long ago in school, maybe you've heard others talk about them, but listen, Hillsdale can make them less intimidating and make sure you get the most out of them. And I honestly think it's a great birthday present to Charlie on what would have been his 32nd birthday, to dive into Hillsdale, learn like he did, be an autodidact, let Hillsdale help you along the way. Go right now to charlieforhillsdale.com. That's charlieforhillsdale.com, no cost, and it's easy to get started, CHARLIE for Hillsdale.com. So Joe LaVorgna is the counselor to the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent. So you have been on this show before. You were on with Charlie, and we were talking about it with the Secretary, that one of Charlie's passions was economics. People I don't think always associate Charlie with economics, but the way he got into politics was studying the Austrian school, studying Milton Friedman. He got really passionate about these macroeconomic trends. He got really passionate about the debt and the currency valuations and things like this. And so you are one of the guys that goes out into the media and talks about what the good work that Treasury is doing. And we were talking in the break about, how this economy is doing. Is it doing well? Is it a mixed bag? I think it's doing mostly well. I mean, the animal spirits are alive and well in this country. So maybe just start there and give us that 30,000-foot view of how you see things going, how Treasury is viewing things in this current moment.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. The data are as good as they could be. I mean, they're actually very good, thanks to President Trump. So in the second quarter, his first full quarter in office, we grew 3.8%. If you take the federal side out, we actually grew 4.5%. So the real GDP, excluding the federal government, grew at 4.5%.
Wow.
And in the third quarter, the latest estimate from the Atlanta Fed, which a lot of people look at, is at 3.8, with also a very similar profile of the growth being led by the private sector, consumers, and also capital spending, CapEx. That's investment in things like AI and other technologies. So that's really what's driving the economy. The labor market is not great. We learned after the fact that the Biden job machine really didn't work very well, that we had about 2 million downward revisions over 2 years. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
So the economy is doing well thanks to President Trump. We need to get the labor market turning higher. Unfortunately, the shutdown is hurting a lot, actually, and that's a factor that we're concerned about. But the long-term outlook under President Trump is excellent.
It's great to
So
hear.
Charlie was one of the things he would talk about repeatedly over the last few months, he talked about the future of young people in America, because there's a lot of extremism among young people. We've seen polls even after Charlie's death that show a shockingly high share of especially those on the left among those under 40 support overt political violence. And he would talk about this choice between MAGA and Mangioneism. Luigi Mangione, the guy who shot the healthcare CEO. And he would basically say you need to give young people a stake in the economy, a sense that they have ownership of things, or they'll become really politically radical. One of his big passions was you need to have young people be owning homes. We've seen, I think in the 1980s, the average first-time home buyer was about 29 years old. That's grown to 38. It's gone up almost 4 or 5 years just since COVID, I believe. And he was very concerned with that what can we do to make it so young people are buying into the system rather than feeling hopeless and atomized. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on what the Trump administration can do along that dimension to especially uplift the youngest Americans who are otherwise at risk of getting really radicalized.
Charlie's exactly right, and the Treasury Secretary recently highlighted the fact that we have a housing affordability crisis, to Charlie's points that he was making so eloquently. One of the things you can do certainly is get inflation down, because under the prior administration, inflation ran at a near 5% annual rate. That's the highest since the inflationary 70s. When you have high inflation, you have high interest rates. Under President Trump, he's been able to get inflation rate down substantially. That's allowed blue-collar wages to expand and to grow quite significantly, and also allowed interest rates to decline. So you look right now at U.S. interest rates, the 10-year yield, the benchmark borrowing rate for mortgages and for corporate borrowers is around 4%. So that's very positive, and that will eventually pull mortgage rates down because inflation is declining, and all the investment that I talked about that President Trump is getting going in the economy, that will increase the economy's ability to produce goods and services, which will further lower inflation. So mortgage rates can't come down further. The administration is also working on things to try to expedite the permitting process, trying to lower some of the costs. Things like that will help, no question, because as you said, young people need to have a skin in the game, need to have a stake in the outcome, and feel like they're not disillusioned. So Charlie was exactly right about that. It will take time to undo the policies we had under the prior administration, but we are optimistic that as the cost of living goes down and as worker wages rise, you'll get more young people being able to go into the home market and be able to buy, get affordability higher. And things will turn. It'll take some time, but things will turn.
Yeah, another important part will be another thing Charlie talked about a lot, the college scam, sort of deflating the scam elements of higher education. Did you see this yesterday with the, I believe it was Santa Clara School of Law?
No.
So this is something that's unfolding right now. One of the things the Trump administration recently did is it capped the annual amount of student loans you could take in the PLUS loans to $50,000 a year. This is the super student loan. A lot of people getting graduate degrees get it. And they capped it at $50,000 a year. So Santa Clara School of Law, last year their tuition was $62,000. This year they announced a scholarship that every single person who goes to the school will get, such that their tuition is now $50,000.
That's a practical example.
A practical example.
Yeah, well, that's it with the
inflation.
government.
Yeah.
I mean, Alice Rivlin, probably not well known among many folk. Old person like me knows who she is. She was head of the Congressional Budget Office under, I believe, under Clinton, and was a vice chair of the Fed. She's certainly not a rightist in any way, shape, form, but she talked about how government with education causes all sorts of big problems, and how they basically create artificial demand, to your point about what the Trump administration is doing, trying to get government out of the market. So that's very important, and lowering costs. So things like this are very important. Let the private sector do its job and let the government get out of the way so that costs can fall, to make education cheaper for everyone. This also comes back to your point on housing, trying to get the government out of the way, senseless regulation that doesn't allow building and things to go forward in a more productive way so that costs can be, can be lower.
How concerned are we about artificial intelligence? You talked about this dichotomy between, you had 4.5% real growth in the private sector, but there are struggles in the labor market. Obviously, that's what I think of first when I think about young people getting skin in the game, getting on that first rung of the ladder to start building wealth and building a career. Is AI something that you are looking at actively? How concerned are you about it eroding, especially those entry-level jobs? You think financial markets, right? Financial analysts on Wall Street, that's the first jobs that are getting cut. So how worried are we about that first rung on the ladder of career building as the first jobs that are going to get cut? Because we're seeing some negative trends with Gen Z employment.
Sure. Look, all new technologies are very disruptive, but the U.S. economic history is such that they ultimately get the economy growing and expanding and thriving in a much better place. So I'm not worried about AI necessarily replacing jobs, although there might be some areas where there is some, some effect. We need a lot of jobs in a lot of high-tech areas, certainly in a lot of high-skilled areas, tradesmen, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, all those things to build. We need a lot of that labor we're still short of. The fact that the administration has secured the border and gotten rid of significant amounts of illegal workers, which are artificially depressing worker wages, is also very important. But like when you want to build and the president wants to reindustrialize the manufacturing base, create high value added, high paying jobs, those aren't AI jobs. Those are jobs that you're building, you're operating a factory, you're getting capital coming in. That's where the U.S. economy will thrive, and President Trump, as a builder, knows how to create things. The Secretary has been excellent in helping articulate and seeing that vision through. And we've got all these new industries. Look at the equity market. Look at the boom we're seeing across these hyperscalers. I mean, there's so many wonderful opportunities. I have to think that the outlook and the ability to do business and to transact in a meaningful way and not be impeded by government regulation and high taxes, those are all things that are going to create jobs for all sorts of people, all sorts of Americans. So it makes me really optimistic. It's not to say there weren't certain areas there will be some dislocations, but President Trump knows how to create jobs, and we'll get it done.
We had the opportunity to speak with the vice president yesterday, just briefly, and it struck me that he is extraordinarily bullish, glass half full, you could say, on AI and its ultimate impact. That we've seen this with the railroad, we've seen this with the automobile, we've seen this with the .com boom. So these new technologies come in, they are disruptive, but ultimately they lead to greater productivity, which leads to additional job opportunities, and hopefully we are able to backfill some of that with trade schools that are in higher trades, right? You think of trade schools, you think of carpenter, HVAC, that kind of thing. But there's trade schools for these high-tech, maybe it's going to be trade schools for programming or robotics or automation.
Right. That's right. My father, he's retired mostly, but he ran the largest trade school, vocational trade school in Connecticut. So, there's tremendous amounts of opportunities that are there. And look, in the bill that was just passed, one big beautiful bill, there's full expensing for CapEx. There's going to be full expensing for factories. So all the things you talk about in terms of building that the president wants to create, those tax incentives are there, which makes the forward really, really bullish to the vice president's comments.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Charlie would talk about that a lot. He really wanted that. He became a big believer in the One Big Beautiful Bill because he saw that the CapEx, that was going to drive a ton of investment in the short term, because private business owners, he was thinking about it from a personal standpoint, going like, well, if we can write all this off right now, let's do it.
Let's do it. And that's still to come.
Yeah, and we haven't seen the impact of that,
that's
right?
Correct. Not yet. We will see it next year. It will really be a wonderful boom. It's going to be a big
And
boom.
that's going to be like, restaurants and small businesses, factories, manufacturing, warehouses, right?
Well, we had the small business sentiment data today, and the numbers still look really solid thanks to President Trump.
That's great. Okay, well, it's good news. Good news. More with Joe LaVorgna in just a second. I'm going to tell you about Tax Network USA, tnusa.com. This feels very poignant to do this read, particularly where we're at. This is not the IRS. We're not there, but it does feel adjacent somehow. The government needs your money. They need more money, and it's your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home, which sounds terrible. Do not let them target you like that. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt altogether. Tax Network USA is A+ rated and has saved over $1 billion for their clients. In just one phone call, you can start the process of stopping the threatening demand letters, stopping the aggressive collections, and resolving your tax matters once and for all. Go to tnusa.com, TNUSA, or call 1-800-958-1000, tnusa.com. We will be back in just a few minutes.